G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. My name's Mark, I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun, Mexico, and I've just walked outside after watching Leinster play against the Northampton Saints, and what a game it was. Some of you said in the comments on my preview show that you were going along to the game today. Let me know how it was from that perspective. It looked amazing with a full crowd there at Croke Park, and the rain stayed away, which was also a great thing. 82,300 the official crowd in attendance today at Croke Park. Let's get into the review video and I'll tell you what I thought about this game. So welcome back to the channel everyone. If you're a regular viewer to my channel, thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it. If you're here for the first time, welcome. It's great to have you. Hope you will stick around. The best way to do that, of course, is to hit the subscribe button. And why not at the same time, if you enjoy this content, give the video a thumbs up and a bit of a like as well. If you are going to leave a comment, make sure it's respectful, because I'm just going to remove it if it's not. So don't waste your time and don't waste mine. Okay, let's get into the game. And we'll talk about what happened at Croke Park this afternoon, because boy, what a game it ended up being. Now, I had picked in the first half that Leinster were going to come out firing, and I thought they were going to dominate the Saints through the forwards. And in the first couple of minutes, we saw Leinster really putting on the power and making all the play in the game. And it was James Lowe, that man on the left wing that I've talked about a lot in my videos, whether it be for Leinster or for Ireland. That great left foot, he put Leinster on the attack with a great kick that found touch right down within 5 metres of the goal line. And of course, Leinster, when they're in that kind of position, they usually make it count. So it was a great opening from Leinster. The crowd were behind them. They got some momentum early in the game, and that always helps. But it was the Saints on this occasion that were able to clear the ball away from their line after doing some good defensive work from the line out. They got the ball back up towards halfway, and that initial threat that had come from Leinster was succumbed at that particular stage. But it was all Leinster again in the next few minutes of the game, and they were really coordinating the play. The Saints were unable to get their hands on the ball a lot in this game, so possession was everything. And as a result of that, Leinster were able to build momentum and territory into the Saints' half of the field. As a result of that, it brought the crowd more into the game, and you just felt that the energy within the stadium there at Croke Park was all behind Leinster to help them maintain that momentum in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. Now, in the 8th minute of the game, we saw Gibson Park do a great little dink kick over the top of the defence of the Saints, and it put them in a little bit of a trouble. They had a bit of a fumbling error there, and the ball came back for the Leinster side. So that was a great opportunity for Gibson Park to put some more pressure on the Saints. Now, Gibson Park was going to play a big part in this game, as he has done for Leinster throughout the season, and he started off really well with that particular little initiative that got or kept Leinster, I should say, on the front foot. So from the resulting scrum of that move from Leinster, or that knock on I should say from the Saints, Leinster got the ball out, pick and go, got close to the line, and it was fairly inevitable that in the 11th minute Leinster were going to score a try. The ball came out to Gibson Park, and all he did was just shoot a little pass on to James Lowe, who had about one step to get over the line, put the ball down, and it was the first try for Leinster. A great conversion from Ross Byrne right on the touchline put the Leinster team out to 7 points to 0 after 12 minutes of the game. Now, we didn't need to wait much longer before the next scoring action in the game. It was all Leinster at this stage. The energy and the momentum was with them. They went back down onto attack again towards the Saints line after 14 minutes of the game. At this stage of the game, it appeared that the Saints didn't really have a game plan, or they weren't able to execute, and that was mainly because Leinster were holding on to the ball and getting very close to their line all the time. So we saw another opportunity when Leinster got right down towards the Saints line. They got a scrum as a result of that, picking more close to the line, and then a fantastic little move that came. Doris threw the ball up in the air. Gibson Park was there. He did a little pat on like that to James Lowe, and woe and behold, before you knew it, James Lowe was over for his second try of the game after just 14 minutes. So it was a great start from Leinster. They had all the momentum in those early minutes, but they made sure they put points on the scoreboard, and that was the key thing in the beginning of this game. Ross Byrne lined up the conversion for the second try of James Lowe, and unfortunately it hit the post and missed, so there was no extra points there. 12-0 was the score at this stage to Leinster, and the Saints were having to fight to get even anything for a sniff of the ball at this stage. But a couple of minutes later the Saints did get the ball, and they had their first real opportunity through their back line. The ball went out right to their wings, but unfortunately he dropped it, so Ram put the ball down as they looked a little bit promising on their back line. Again, the Leinster defence was up very, very fast, causing these errors within the Saints back line, and that was the first part of the momentum in the game we saw from the Saints around about the 18th minute mark of the first half. Leinster back on attack again around the 20th minute mark. A kick went deep into the Saints territory and Frawley was back, saving the day on this occasion. He cleared the ball very well with a big kick that got the Saints back close to halfway, but it was another opportunity where Leinster were putting real pressure on the Saints, and they were seeming to struggle when they were going backwards. They didn't seem to be holding their defensive line, or Leinster were finding a way through it, and the way they were doing that was very intelligent. Gibson Park was doing a lot of short passes to the likes of McCarthy and Van der Fleer and Doris, keeping them close to the inside channels, and the Saints were having real problems being able to defend that area of play. So there was some easy yards early on for Leinster in that particular part of the game. So very good play from Leinster. They were using those inside channels, hitting up 3 or 4 times, and then the ball would go wide out through the backs and Osborne and getting the other members of the Leinster backline involved. So right up through to the 29th minute of the first half, it was still all Leinster in this game. They were putting a lot of pressure on, and I just couldn't see a way that the Saints were going to get back into this game if Leinster were able to keep this momentum going for 80 minutes. I've said in previous videos, if you want to beat Leinster, you have to score more than 30 points in a game, and as this stage of the game, the first half an hour, I thought there's no way the Saints are going to be able to score 30 points to beat this Leinster team. Now after the 26th minute, we got a penalty attempt again from Ross Byrne right out in front. This one, even I probably could have got it over. So all of a sudden we had Leinster out to 15 points to 0. Now after the amount of possession and territory they were getting, they probably thought they were going to get a bit more points than that, because it was all one-way traffic at that stage. And then we had the kickoff after that penalty was scored by Leinster, and the Saints had a man in front. A really beginner's error here for the Saints, and things weren't going well for them in the first half of this rugby. They looked like a team that were under pressure. They looked like a team that wasn't getting much possession, and they looked like a team that when they did have the ball, they didn't have a plan on what they were going to do with it. Now there was a combination of Leinster's good rush defence and that, but I also thought that there was a lack of leadership really on the field for the Saints at that stage. There didn't seem to be anyone in particular giving the decisions and making the decisions for the Saints team when they had the ball. Courtney Law. We got to the 32nd mark of the game, and at this stage the penalty count was well against the Saints as well, 6-1 at this stage. So a lot of indiscretions being given, particularly around the breakdown area, and this is where Doris and Van der Fleer were really doing their work, and McCarthy was in there as well, having a great game for Leinster. And I just thought, yeah, these are the people that I spoke about in the preview video, and here they were standing up on this occasion, a big European Champions Cup semi-final game at home at Croke Park in front of 82,000, and the cream of the crop is rising to the challenge that's put in front of them. It was a very, very good display, and as I said, Leinster were probably a little bit upset at this stage of the game. They didn't have more points on the scoreboard because they really had a lot of the play. And then for the last 7 minutes of the first half, we saw a change in this game. The Saints started to get a bit of ball and they started to go forward a little bit better. And as they did, they started to look good. And in particular, we saw a fantastic steal in the 33rd minute from Courtney Laws, who was in there getting the ball from the bottom of the ruck, and he won that opportunity for the Saints. This put him on the front foot, and they put a couple of phases together that looked really, really dangerous. But again, the Leinster defence was good, and at this stage of the game, it was holding out. The Saints' good work during this part of the game finally paid off in the 39th minute when they got a penalty opportunity pretty much in front of the post, although it was about 40 metres out. Finn Smith got up and put it over, so we had the score back to 15-3. And yeah, while the Saints deserved those 3 points, I think, for the previous few minutes of the game, I think Leinster again would have been saying, well, that's not really the gap we wanted at half time. But we had a couple of minutes to go, and we went into extra time in the first half, And as a result of that, Leinster had a fantastic passage of play. They put 15 phases together. They got right down close to the Saints line, and I, for one, and probably 82,300 people in the crowd at Croke Park, thought Leinster were going to get over for a try right on half time. But they didn't, and would this be a big turning point in the game? Sturdy defence from the Saints. They did a fantastic job in holding Leinster out at that stage of the game. Leinster threw everything at them, including the kitchen sink, and they weren't able to get over the line. There was right up against the goalpost at one stage in Saints territory, and Leinster only had to get the ball back to get them over the line, but it didn't happen. So we went to the half-time break with Leinster in the lead, 15 points to 3, and I think Leo Cullen and Jacques Nienaber would have said to the boys, well, we just need you to keep this going, because everything looked pretty good at that stage, but execution was going to be the key in the second half. Every time Leinster got the ball in the first 20 minutes of that game, they looked very, very dangerous. But then as the Saints started to get their defensive patterns in order, Leinster had more and more trouble getting through the Saints' defence. And then in the last 5 or 6 minutes, as I said, of that first half, the Saints got a little bit of momentum themselves. So while it looked very good for Leinster at half-time, I thought if the Saints were able to score first in the second half, put a little bit of scoreboard pressure back on Leinster, we might have a very exciting game in our hands. James Lowe scored 2 tries in that first half. Gibson Park was fantastic. The back three for the Leinster forwards were going like they always do, like a train without any stations in front of them, and they were playing very, very well. Ross Byrne was doing a couple of good things also from number 10, although towards the end of the half I thought he started kicking a little bit too much in general play. Leinster looked far better when they kept ball in hand and started putting pressure on the Northampton Saints, and that was the way they were going to tire the Saints out in this game. So they wanted to put the boot away, I thought, a little bit in the second half and run some more at the Saints. The Saints would have been happy though with the last 5 minutes of that first half. It gave them a little bit of an inclination that they could get through this Leinster defence. It was all going to be interesting to see what happened at the beginning of the second half. Well, the second half started off exactly the way that the Saints wouldn't have wanted it to start, and that was by Leinster getting some real big momentum. We saw a huge run by Caelan Doris, and then he set up a number of phases of play. It got Leinster right back down on attack, and it was that man, James Lowe, that went over for his 3rd try in this game, and he probably couldn't believe his luck because they were coming pretty easy for him today. They were being set up very well by his fellow playmates. And it was a good move from Leinster again. They put several phases of play together, going from one side of the field to the other. And it was just a case of, I think the Saints ran out of energy in terms of tackling. And it was a pretty early foray in the second half of this game. So was this going to blow the game open? Was this what we wanted to see in terms of Leinster going ahead early in the second half? The Saints would have kicked themselves a little bit, I thought, by giving that try away so early in the second half. So by now we were 50 minutes into this game, and I was thinking the Saints have only scored 3 points. How are they going to get themselves back into this game? Leinster, though, took their foot off the gas a little bit and they started kicking a little bit more. We saw kicks from Gibson Park, box kicks. They started to become more prevalent. And we also saw Ross Byrne kicking away a bit of ball as well. The thing that Leinster did, I thought, was a tactical error at this part of the game. They started giving the ball back to the Saints unnecessary. They were doing so well in the first half when they kept the ball in hand and using those inside forwards to do those darting and penetrating runs off Gibson Park. That wasn't so much the case in the beginning of the second half, and we saw the ball going to air a lot more. And to be honest, those kicks weren't that effective. It gave Northampton the ball back pretty easily without too much pressure on, and they were able to run it back at Leinster, and they started to find a few holes in the Leinster defence. Augustus, the number 8 for Northampton, was having a hell of a game. He was very, very good through in the first half, but he started to really come alive in the second half, and some of the Leinster boys started to get a little bit tired chasing the Saints around the field. Augustus made a couple of really big plays and got through the Leinster defence, and you could see his teammates starting to get a little bit of energy from that as well. We saw Courtney Laws do a couple of other good grabs in the breakdown situation at this period of the game. And then in the 58th minute, it turned around a little bit for the Saints. We saw a kick go over the top from Ram. He chased it towards the Leinster line. Porter and Lama got in each other's way, fumbled the ball around a bit. It came out to Ram again. He went down on it for a try. and suddenly Northampton were back into this game by putting some points on the board. 20 points to 8 with the kick to come. Finn Smith had his kicking boots on today as well. So the try was scored in the corner, but that didn't worry Finn Smith. He put it over precisely from the touchline, and it was back to 20 points to 10 with 20 minutes left in the game. Were we going to see a turnaround from the Northampton Saints, or were we going to see Leinster put on another gear and go back to doing what they were doing in the first half? Because it was working very effectively. At this stage of the game also, we started to see the benches starting to be put on the field, and as we usually do, the forwards started to change their look and feel as well. As this happened, the Saints were starting to get a little bit momentum into the game. 61 minutes in, another big moment in the game. It was a pretty straightforward penalty kick opportunity for Ross Byrne. He missed it, he pushed it to the right, and for me that showed there was a bit of pressure on and they were starting to feel it. So that would have taken Leinster out to 23 points to 10. Instead, they were still within striking distance if the Saints could get a couple of late tries in this game. We still had 20 minutes on the clock, 66 minutes in, and the game really started to open up, and as it did, you felt as though the Saints were getting back into this game. The crowd was a little bit quieter, and Leinster had changed their tactics in this game, and this is what I thought let the Saints get back into it, because as soon as they got some momentum, they could feel the energy shift, and they were doing some really, really good things. Were they going to run out of time though? Because we got into the last 10 minutes of the game and there was a really good play from the Saints, and Freeman put a kick through. It went into the in-goal area. There was looking like there could be a try opportunity, but that man Gibson Park was back and put the ball down over the line. So it was a 5-metre attacking scrum for the Saints, and there was still 8 minutes left in this game. It was going to be an exciting finish, that's for sure. From the ensuing scrum, the Saints got a penalty, and it was all go because they were going to take the tap and they were going to run for it. 1 minute later, Seabrook went over for a try to the Saints, and boy, this game was all on again with just a few minutes to go. So a great try by the Saints. They worked really hard to get back down into the Leinster area. They put a lot of pressure on Leinster at this stage of the game, and they came away with the points, which was refreshing for them. So we had 4 or 5 minutes left in the game with a conversion to come. Would it go over from Finn Smith? And the answer was yes, it did go over. So now we were back to 20 points to 17 with just a few minutes left to go in the game. And it was all the Saints' momentum at this stage, but Leinster had the opportunity to kick off and put the ball back into the 22 of the Saints and see if they could put some pressure on through their defensive line push. However, Augustus, that man that I've been talking about, he got the ball from the kickoff and made a fantastic run back up towards the halfway and set the Saints on another attacking move back into the Leinster half. Unfortunately for the Saints, they lost the ball, and it gave the Leinster team an opportunity to maybe put this game out of sight. They put 17 phases of play together. Absolutely fantastic from one side to the other, and we were just waiting perhaps for that Saints defence to crack, but it didn't. They held on and they did a fantastic job in keeping Leinster out at this point in the game. It was all on the line, and I thought in those last couple of minutes, as Leinster were running from side to side and looking for ways to get through the tiring Northampton defence, they were going to do it, but they didn't. And kudos to the Saints at this stage of the game. They were still working hard, and more importantly, they still believed they had an opportunity to win this game. It was coming down to the wire. In the 79th minute, we had a minute left on the clock. The Saints went into a breakdown situation. They didn't release the ball. The penalty went to Leinster, and it looked like they were going to get out of jail, because without much time left on the clock, it was going to be a case of a free kick into touch, take the line out, do a maul, and then kick the ball out. Well, it was still a little bit of trouble for Leinster in that last minute. They put the free kick into touch. They took a line out. They tried to do the maul and get the ball out into touch as quickly as they could. They had a little bit of trouble getting the ball out from that maul, but it finally came out. I think it came out to Harry Byrne, who'd come on for Frawley, who'd went off in the last couple of minutes of the game, and he put the ball into touch for a Leinster win. And as soon as the final whistle went, the TV cameras went on Caelan Doris, and you could tell by the look on his face, it was a huge sigh of relief. Leinster finally got over the line in that one. It was a close call, and I must say that Northampton really came back into this game against what I thought was going to be the odds. I thought at 15-3 at half time, it was going to be difficult for them, particularly after James Lowe had scored early in the second half. I thought Leinster were going to run away with it at that stage, but I think Leinster did themselves an injustice by changing their strategy in that second half, and it really let the Northampton Saints back into the game, in addition to the Saints getting the defensive patterns worked out in the second half, and that's what really brought them back into the game, I thought, as the game went on. A lot of players got tired, of course. There was a lot of running in this game, backwards and forwards. There were a lot of sections of play where the teams went for 10, 15 phases of play. That wearies out a defensive line for sure. Leinster were good for the win. They deserved it based, I think, on that first half performance. But as I've said in previous videos, if you're going to beat Leinster, you need to score 30 points. Today, you would have only had to score 21. And unfortunately for the Saints, they weren't able to do that. It was a really good game of rugby. I thought Leinster controlled it very well in the first half. We saw the last 5 minutes of the first half where the Saints got a little bit of momentum. They also owned about 15 or 20 minutes in that second half and did very well to come back into the game and perhaps nearly steal it at the end. But Leinster will go through to the final of the Champions Cup now on the 25th of May to be played at Tottenham Stadium in London. It's going to be a huge game for whoever they play, and we're going to find out tomorrow because the other semi-final between Toulouse and Harlequins will take place in Toulouse in France, and that's going to be a cracker of a game as well. So this was a really good game of rugby. James Lote did brilliant to score 3 tries. Gibson Park was brilliant. Caelan Doris, Van der Flair were fantastic. Joe McCarthy once again, and Conan also, who came on as a replacement for Leinster in the second half. He did some good pick and carries as well when the game was getting very, very tense in there. The front row did well for Leinster. Eventually they started winning some scrum penalties, so Furlong, Porter and Sheehan, and we saw Sheehan in a couple of defensive areas that were important in this game. From the Saints side, we saw some of their players grow into this game. Ram had a good game on the wing. Freeman did well as well. Alex Mitchell was solid at halfback, and Finn Smith, he's a very good player, isn't he, for his age? He's got a lot of maturity, Finn Smith, and the way that he kicks those conversions and penalties, very mature head on his shoulders. He's going to go a long way in the game of rugby over the years. Expect him to be a standout, I think, for England at the Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2027. So the Saints came up a little bit short today. They put in a great display though in the second half. They had Leinster rattled there at the end, and they were unlucky not to score the final points. But at the end of the day, it was a win for Leinster in front of their famous crowd at Croke Park, in a moment that either the crowd or the players will never forget in the history of rugby, because you don't get to play rugby at Croke Park too many times representing Leinster or Ireland. So those players will go away today with that memory forever. So that's how I saw the game today. Really good game of rugby. Looking forward to the other semi-final tomorrow. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this game. If you were at the game, I'd love to hear what you thought of the atmosphere, and how was it in that last 10 minutes when the Northampton Saints were coming back. If you were a Saints supporter at the game, what was it like for you? Did you think Leinster were going to walk away with it in the first half or after the first half? And I'm sure you would have been proud of the boys when they came back in that second half. Okay, that's my review video of the first semi-final in this year's Investec Champions Cup. I'll be back again tomorrow for a review video of the other game. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone. Enjoy the rest of the rugby this weekend, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.